Well, the benefit is to have somebody to throw creative ideas against and really to divide and conquer the work. But again, I think it has to be the right combination. Like, we've seen it not work. If you have two people carrying the load, it's a lighter load for either person. I can imagine if you pick the wrong person, it could be, the slow road to hell. I'm just glad we didn't,
And I would say, make sure you pick somebody you can trust. I trust Hillary implicitly. And that is huge. Like, I trust my husband implicitly and I trust her implicitly. And those are probably the only two people, basically that I trust that much.
Well, hey there. Welcome to Media Savvy, the podcast that gives you a behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to get noticed by media and become the go-to expert that they keep coming back to. I'll be sitting down with successful writers, producers, and entrepreneurs to learn the tools and tactics they use to build their reputation and in turn boost their business. I'm your host, Bonnie Taub-Dix, and I've been working with top-tier media outlets for more than 30 years, anywhere from traditional print publications to online and social platforms. And I'm sharing my nutrition guidance without gimmicks. But you don't have to be a dietitian for this podcast to speak to you. Through my one-to-one conversations, you'll learn how to build a strategy to get your name in the news and establish yourself as an authority in your field, no matter what the industry. With Media Savvy, I'm on a mission to inspire, motivate, and empower you to have the confidence and tools you need to shine in the spotlight. Are you ready? Let's get Media Savvy. Hey there, welcome to the Media Savvy podcast. I'm your host, Bonnie Taub-Dix, and if you have ever thought about collaborating with a colleague or perhaps a good friend, then this is the podcast for you. And today we're going to be hearing from Elizabeth Ward, who I'll call Liz, Hillary Wright. They are the dynamic duo behind the Menopause Dietitians. We'll dive into how they carved out their niche, the ups and downs of working with partners, and their journey to becoming trusted voices in the media. The other thing that they have done, which I think is amazing, is they've collaborated without losing their individuality. So we're going to hear all about that today. So get ready for an inspiring and insightful conversation on collaboration, media training, and finding your own voice. So first, let me tell you a little bit about our guests. Liz Ward is a registered dietitian with more than 30 years of experience as an educator, author, and nutrition communicator. Liz specializes in nutrition throughout the life cycle and is the author of Expect the Best, Your Guide to Healthy Eating Before, During, and After Pregnancy. And she has several books about feeding young children and families. Liz is the co-author, along with Hillary, of The Menopause Diet Plan, a natural guide to managing hormones, health, and happiness. And she also writes regularly for WebMD. Hillary Wright is a registered dietitian, also with more than 30 years of experience. Looks like we all have a lot of experience in this field. As a nutrition educator, writer, and consultant. As the director of nutrition for the Wellness Center at Boston IVF, Hillary specializes in women's health issues, including diet and lifestyle management of polycystic ovary syndrome, fertility, and support through the perimenopausal menopause transition and beyond. Hillary is the author of 2 books, The PCOS Diet Plan, A Natural Approach to Health for Women and Polycystic Ovary Syndrome, and The Prediabetes Diet Plan, How to Reverse Prediabetes and Prevent Diabetes Through Healthy Eating and Exercise. And as I mentioned, she is the co-author of The Menopause Diet Plan, along with Liz Ward. I love that the two of you were friends way back, and that, Liz, you raised your 3 girls as friends of Hillary's 3 boys. How did you two meet?
Well, we were just talking about that a second ago. We met in organic chemistry lab at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, and we were 20. And they put us together, and I don't know why, because
Karma.
Karma. But in terms of organic chemistry skills, no, not a good choice. But look what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we also took
amazing.
other classes together. I do remember making a pie crust with you that we had to feed to the geese at the campus pond because the science didn't come out quite right.
Yeah.
Did they make it? Did the geese make it through?
Oh, the geese ate everything. They ate everything.
I'm sure they felt
were
spoiled.
fine. Yeah.
Well, it just goes to show dietitian's background from organic chemistry to making pie crust. We could do it all.
Exactly.
But how did the two of you come to work together now? What was the aha moment when you realized that you both wanted to focus on menopause nutrition? Because menopause is really very specific and it is really having its day. But how did you anticipate this topic? And did you just know that this was going to be something that would really be hot at some point?
Well, we were actually experiencing this transition ourselves. And so we actually got in on this kind of before it started to have a moment, because we were both entering menopause later. And I remember having this thought, like, I don't know, is this normal, to have, because you hear more about early menopause transitions. And we just realized that there wasn't a lot of information to tell us what was normal, what was not normal. And as dietitians, we wanted to know, what can influence this related to diet and lifestyle? What does the science say? Where is the science, lacking? And so we had always talked about doing a project together, but we were so busy raising 6 kids between us that I always say, it first came about. We were talking about this so long ago that we were talking about doing a radio show together. That's how long ago it was.
Before podcasts.
Right.
Yeah.
It was going to be called Shut Up and Eat. So, we always thought the time will come when we have more time to devote to this, and it just happened to coincide with that phase of life.
Wow, it's so interesting. I was one of those people, and I know some people are going to be rolling their eyes, that had 3 hot flashes during menopause, 3. And I remember them. And I am always so cold as I sit here in my sweater that when I had those hot flashes, I thought, oh my gosh, this feels so good. But I could imagine if they happened very often, that would not be the case. So I think it's great that you brought your own experiences into the stuff that you do, which of course always makes things more impactful. Did you have to, as media training, did you have to change a lot of your messages or really learn a lot to create media messages surrounding menopause?
Well, we wrote the book first, and it's steeped in science. It's heavily referenced, even though it's for a consumer audience. It's perfect for a dietitian because, it's referenced, and they could say, well, where did that come from? And then they could look up the reference and be sure that it was science-based. So, I find the easiest way to translate is to really have solid information at first. So after that, what we did was, make shorter snippets out of that information and, put it on Facebook and Instagram so that women could, become, more educated and more interested in the topic. So, I mean, you know how it is, Bonnie. You have to grab people's attention. So we do that, but we never do it so that it is not science-based. It is always based on science. It's not BS. There's no BS. There's nothing to hook you to buy anything, in anything that we do. And we're not inflammatory and we're not scary. We're just here to offer information.
And I think that's an important piece of, we try to be positive voices. I mean, not deny that this can be a really bumpy time of life. But, we try to be as authentic as we can be because we're women that have experienced this in addition to being dietitians, digging into the research. So, I think people appreciate that we don't make outrageous claims and, we try to communicate in bites that people can actually use as opposed to scare tactics, which, there's too much of that around. So we try to be a light in the darkness.
And, this is just a good time to mention, where can people find you on Instagram? Because I love your posts because they seem like they are friendly. It almost makes menopause seem like fun, the way that you describe it.
Well, we're at Menopause Diet Plan on Instagram, which is the name of the book, and at Menopause Diet Plan on Facebook too. So not too difficult to remember. And we made it the name of the book so that we could just be consistent, all the way across the board.
Got it. And We have all written books individually, and I love that you wrote this book together. And what do you think are some of the biggest advantages of having a partner on projects like this, especially in a specialized field? Because it's not easy to do this stuff alone. So how have you helped each other the most?
I think it's easier than writing a book entirely by yourself. And what I thought was really interesting when Liz and I were trying to divide up like the topic areas, it really kind of organically fleshed out. Like, I don't remember us ever thinking like, oh, I'll write that. You write, should I write that? Like, it just sort of kind of came down into just a natural division of tasks, which was, I thought in part made it easy.
Yeah, I mean, we wrote the book in a year, or I'm going to say maybe less than a year.
Yeah.
It was so nice to have somebody who could check me, that wasn't, it's great when you can get a registered dietitian who will edit your book that, let's say the publisher will hire, but to have somebody that was super vested in it, check me and say, no, that's not the way I see it. Or let's do it this way, or let's do it. Or based on what I hear from women, this is the way I think we should say it. And it is, as you know, it's such a lonely process. Otherwise, where you just have to drive yourself and make yourself do it. Well, we each still had to do our own parts. I mean, it wasn't like it wasn't lonely at times, but it was way less lonely, and it was way more collaborative. And I that's what I really, really needed at this point in my life. I just don't want to do anything by myself, totally. I want more people involved because I think that everybody brings, something to the project.
Absolutely. What I thought was also helpful is that we wrote this book for a publishing house who were, involved in setting the deadlines. Like, I can imagine there would be more complexity if you were trying to self-publish a book together and you're both trying to figure out where the goalpost is. Accountability is huge. So I think each of us having the other to hold us accountable, but also, we did have an editor and publisher and, some general deadlines, which, keeps us on track because we're both really busy with other things that we do. So, I'm a deadline person. Like, if you don't give me a deadline, it's not going to
happen. No.
That was helpful.
Yeah, that's very challenging. When I wrote my book, I had 8 more weeks. They moved my deadline up, and I had no idea how I was ever going to get it done. And it was my husband's birthday. We went out to play mini golf, and on the last hole, I ran for the ball and broke my foot. And when
my God.
And when I went to the hospital, the doctor said, I have some bad news for you. You have to stay off your foot completely for 8 weeks. And I was like, oh my gosh. I started to cry. I was like, thank you. Because and I was really glad I didn't fall on my hand.
Your hands are still fine though, right?
So the message was there. Well, working closely with the partner, obviously you talked about the advantages, but it could really have challenges. So could you talk about some of the obstacles you may have faced in your collaboration and maybe how you overcame them? For example, how do you handle situations where you have differing opinions or ideas or a different strategy for how something should be laid out, like in your book? How did you handle those things?
What's interesting is deadlines always make people tense. You know what I mean? And people have different ways of approaching the tension of the deadline. We think so similarly in a lot of ways. And we're we both have good senses of humor, but we're also both pretty outspoken. And I think we could talk about things and kind of, jibe each other at times and just know, like, this is the stress of the moment. This is, I think it's so, like, I remember we had a conversation early on and we're like, the friendship is way more important than any project that we could do together.
Yep.
And so if that ends up ever being an issue, it's not going to be an issue because that's not what's important.
Nope.
But we had that conversation right up front.
Yes.
Because we have different personalities in some ways, and which I think are complementary and what.
But we're not the same person. We're not twins, so of course, but we're really similar.
Right.
A few people said to me, be careful about working with a friend. And I said, it's going to be fine, and it was, but I think that's because of what Hillary just said, that, when we're, probably grating on each other's nerves a little bit, it's like, you go to your corner, I'll go to my corner. It's like a marriage. Like, she is my work spouse. And that is the way I would treat my husband. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not, nothing, no amount of money, no amount of work, nothing is better than that relationship. And it's the same here. And you have to keep that in mind. If that's the way it is. If you're just friends, if you're collaborators, that's another subject entirely. But no, nothing was going to wreck that relationship. No way.
I mean, this was decades and decades of friendship prior to even doing this. So I don't know how it would be if you picked a collaborator because you felt like, oh, we both bring expertise and we'd be good in a project, but we don't have that friendship. I don't know what that would be like.
Yeah.
But, this, because we care so much about each other, there's a lot of tolerance built in,
Yeah.
What's so nice about this is it sounds like this work that you're doing together is kind of like the icing on the cake, but the cake is your relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
And that it's mutual respect really is what I'm hearing. And that makes all the difference.
Exactly.
And, we both have really twisted senses of humor, which
very dark.
That's the icing on the cake.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably why we all like each other,
Yeah.
Well, one of the really unique situations here with your collaborations is that you're each individually very successful writers. You work for brands, you're consultants. How do you maintain your individual identities when you're also working as a team, especially when you're promoting your brand, personal brand, and then you also want to promote the stuff that you do together?
Yeah, I don't worry too much about promoting my personal brand. I mean, I'm here. If a brand wants to hire me, a company or a commodity board wants to hire me because they think, I give good advice to the people that they want to reach, great. I'm here. And Hillary still sees a lot of patients. I mean, that is really her core focus. And so we've actually collaborated together, and worked for a commodity board recently. Mm-hmm. So I don't think about that. I don't think about trying to stay separate and me being me and you being you.
It's like we each have these areas of expertise that bring something important to the project. Yeah. Like Liz is the social media person. Like I always say, like if it was up to me, this menopause diet plan presence online would just not be what it is at all.
That is true.
And she loves it. And I'll do anything she wants. We can do my kitchen. I am in the trenches with the people. So I hear a lot about what women want to hear about. And I hear their frustrations. I spend a tremendous amount of time answering questions about misinformation online. So it allows me to have, my finger on the pulse of like, what do people really want to hear about? Yeah. But then we toss projects, Liz has tossed me projects. Mm-hmm. I recently tossed her a project. So we have connections in different ways that ultimately benefits us, but also each other, at times too.
Yeah.
It's funny. One of the questions that I had for you was how do you show your unique strengths, because you each bring something different to the partnership. And I think you actually just answered that so beautifully. And these days, I think that when you are in a new collaboration, it is a very different thing than where you come from. Because, everybody might want to do the social part and everybody may want to do the charts or tables or whatever. So I think it's really so important, just like in a marriage, that you each have these different strengths without having to, get in line ahead of the other.
Well, you can't be too competitive with your partner. You have to I don't know. I'm naturally competitive. I don't think I could have done all the things I've done media wise if I wasn't competitive. And sometimes, quite frankly, I need to tone that down.
Well,
give it a rest. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So you have to figure out when you're collaborating with somebody, what matters to you, what you can live with and what you cannot live with. And then if it's someone that you don't know, you really need to check in with each other, I think, regularly and say, it's like working with a client. It's like, am I giving you what you need? Are you giving me what I need? And with a client, it's money. But with a partner, it's going to be, you're both going to be doing the same thing. You need things while doing this project because it's stressful.
Yeah.
The other thing I would add is that Liz and I are both hardcore committed to the idea that registered dietitians should be the voice of science and evidence. And we don't say anything unless we can back it up.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are going to share something that is evolving, we'll say it's evolving. But, as nutrition professionals, if we're not the ones talking about the science, how are we different from the rest of the world? And so it's helpful, I think, because we know that neither one of us is going to come up with something that somebody's going to come after us.
Right.
Never. Where'd you get that from?
No.
Well, it's interesting you asked. Have a study.
Let me pull up the 5 studies that I use for this one sentence that I wrote. We are, call us old school in that fashion. Yeah. But I would rather be so solid, so sound in what we're saying than not. And we'll put in the work for that. And I think that if you're working with somebody who's not like that, you need to be careful.
That would be tough.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
So you're both sciencey. You both.
We only have one reputation.
One reputation,
and it's your reputation that is a huge part of your brand,
right?
So people know if they hire Liz and I, we're gonna, we both do consulting with people that have like great ideas about nutrition. And we're going to be honest with what is that great idea is really awesome for like 1% of the population. So we're
brutally honest.
Try to be
brutally honest, but collaborative at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Liz, before you said something like sometimes you need to be like toned down. Hillary, do you ever tone Liz down?
Probably. Well,
Liz, I love your face, Liz.
She probably wants to strangle me sometimes because I am just don't operate at the same level a lot of times. So, again, we're not trying to make it sound like with this perfect couple, but I probably am more, toned down on some things, and she probably, elevates me in some ways.
You work at the same level at doing different things. It's not I don't think it's working at the same level. I don't think it's that at all. It's just like, I'm like, me, Bonnie, go, 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 go. Like too much sometimes. So Hillary would be like, which is why I like her because she is a little more chill than I am. So, everybody has their yin and yang.
Yeah. A good mix because sometimes it could be where if you were calling her 20 times a day, does that ever happen?
Well, Liz is like, I'm pretty type A and go too, but I like to play golf on Friday afternoons. So I am not going to take meetings on Friday afternoons if I can avoid it.
There are some boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are some boundaries.
But I don't call you 20 times a day, but I send her 20 memes a day or 20 reels a day. Does that count?
Alvin. We particularly like baby goats.
You do? Okay.
Into baby goats and any animals to reduce our stress level.
Donkeys.
Does that help you with reducing your stress level?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
We make each other laugh
like all day long. All day long. And you know what it's like. You just can look at a reel, for, 30 seconds and just think, oh, God, that was so funny. And,
funny.
And you're in the middle of banging away on something and it just relieves your stress.
Well, I think like what you said is that, having everything that you do as being science-backed and science-based, I think that sometimes it's a little too much seriousness online. With with that kind of stuff. So I think that having a little fun and humor in it, and I know that that's one of the things that I also love about your Instagram, is that they make me laugh when could be a subject that is very serious and very sciencey, but you could make light of it too. So I love that too. I hope that people tune into your Instagram because it's a lot of fun.
Pretty self-deprecating also, I would say.
That could be helpful too. Maybe not to you, but it could be helpful in terms of humor. Where do you see the Menopause Dietitians brand going in the future? Do you have any joint projects or initiatives coming up that we could be on the lookout for? And, tell us a little bit more about that. What do you have in mind?
It's like, do we want to talk about it? That's
no, we don't really have that much in mind, to tell you the truth. It takes a lot of work to promote that book and to keep up with all the social media, plus do our own jobs. And, at this point in life, we think that's good enough. And I think that's something that we try to convey too, that it's okay to be good enough, that you don't have to keep, competing and doing more and more and more. And I think that, midlife women like to hear that. And that's really kind of our idea of how to do things, especially since, you were talking about work-life balance. And
I mean, I think the fact that we're at the age that we're at, and we both enjoy, like we've talked about this, we're at an age where people start to talk about, like, when do you think you're going to retire and all this kind of stuff. And neither one of us really talk about that because we figure we'll just keep doing things as long as it's fun and we're open to opportunities. The brand, I think, has allowed us to get some attention from people. So things have come our way, which, we really like that kind of passive, like somebody comes to us and asks us if we want to do
love that. Of
course. Ultimately the goal, right, is that you don't have to, bust your hump for every opportunity. So as long as we continue to enjoy it, we'll just continue to get creative and do things.
Right.
But the work-life balance thing is hugely important.
Right, exactly. Because for the last, however long we've known each other, 40 years, we've been building, building. And not saying we're coasting, but we're enjoying.
We also both, I think, like that. We obviously like to learn new things and do new things. Like
definitely.
Sometimes people look at us and they're like, "Wow, you guys do so much." We're like, "We do,"
do?
"Oh, I thought that." We're naturally curious people. That maybe
always learning. Learning.
Kind of like to be exposed to new things.
Well, I think the good thing about our field, and then again, if we're not just talking about our field, we're just talking about learning. And like recently, I've gotten into listening to audiobooks. I used to listen to podcasts when I walk, like business podcasts, self-improvement podcasts, nutrition podcasts. Now I listen to audiobooks that have nothing to do with anything that I'm doing. It's like historical fiction from the 19 whatevers.
Oh, I
have found it to be so relaxing and so enjoyable because it's something that I just was really not doing enough. Everything I read was nonfiction.
Right.
So I think that at this point when we could actually enjoy ourselves more and do things that are things of our choosing, or things that come to us that we decide to do, it's really a wonderful place to be. And I get that question a lot also. Are you ever thinking of retiring? It's like, I don't even know what that means, but if I don't want to work, I won't work.
No. Right. I mean, we're writers. We could write until the day we die. I mean,
exactly.
It doesn't, it's not, hard to imagine that.
Just peel things off as they become less appealing.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. That's to me, I think it's such a great place to be. It's almost like when people say, don't you wish your kids were babies again? Absolutely not.
No,
I love my kids at this age. No. They finally really, they're so helpful and I like them now.
There's no point in wishing for something that, was in the past anyway.
That expression, you could wish your life away and never live a single day. You ever hear that one?
I mean,
Plus, that type of time of life is so frenetic when you're like trying to work. Like Liz and I both are, if you looked at our, I guess you'd call them CVs at this point, you would never know that we had 3 kids each in the middle of that because we just kept doing what we needed to do to like earn money,
Grinding.
make money,
Grinding.
so that we can be with our kids, but still keep our foot in the professional door.
I mean,
but it was chaos a lot of times.
Okay,
and this is like a
total
much more
chaos.
reflective time.
And I wrote my first book when I was on my maternity leave with my oldest daughter. That I took a 6-month maternity leave, but still, I wrote it. I'm like, what am I doing? But I did it, and it got done. But that's kind of the way we do things. You know, that's the way we did things.
That's the way we did things, which, brings us again to what we don't have to do now. And we did it already. It's not like we didn't try it. It's not like we slacked off. We did it already. And now we don't have to do it that way, which is really a beautiful thing.
Right. So I remember early in the career, like doing all these things because you think they might turn into something else. And a lot of times they don't.
Right.
You don't do that as much at this age.
No, absolutely
not.
not.
No, I'm not doing that. That's not going to lead to anything.
Is that going to be a good idea for me? No, pass.
Yeah, pass. Exactly. Well, if you could look back, what is the one piece of advice that you may have given to your younger self?
So much. I mean, I really feel like I did it the way I wanted to do it. And, again, a lot of things that you do that your younger self would, a good example would be like, don't do everything people ask you to do because of what I just said. But that's part of your process of growing and maturing, that I don't know that you can get to a place where you realize what's not worth pursuing until you kind of go through that.
Well,
so I'm not
I
really
don't
sure.
think like we have any regrets because we were able to do this the way we wanted to. We both worked part-time when our kids were little, and we were, taking them here, there, and everywhere. And I think that made me a better mom. I don't know about you, but I liked working. I thought that there was a good balance. And then for me, I was growing my own business after I had my third. And I was lucky. I was lucky that I could do that. And I think Hillary's saying the same thing. We did it the way we wanted to. I don't think we would have wanted to work totally full-time.
And there's some concessions, if we both worked full time and worked our way up the ladder, we'd probably both be richer than we are, I guess. But as my brother says, who's a kind of a corporate guy, he's like, you guys are some of the few people I know that still really enjoy what you do.
Oh, us?
Yeah.
Really? You said that about us?
And my husband, Tony. See, I always
true.
My husband's self-employed, so I always had to have benefits. So I always had to have a 20-hour job with somebody that was, and for years I was insuring 5 people on a 20-hour job. So by the time I paid for the health insurance and threw money on retirement, I was making basically gross money from that job, but always made, eventually started making a lot more money doing the other things. That was my anchor that gave my family the stability of knowing we had health insurance, but also gave me the freedom to say, okay, all the other hours of the week, whatever I do, I'm going to make a lot more money per hour. And we both have had some good lucky breaks along the way, that definitely enabled us to do some of the things that we've done.
We've had lucky breaks, but I'd like to think it's because we were highly qualified.
Absolutely. Why
to
not
have
us?
a lucky break?
Exactly.
What do they say about luck? What is that saying? I just like something about good luck is really hard work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right? Bonnie, you probably know
It's really true. I really know what you're saying. And it's so funny because I always feel so lucky. And I feel like so many good things came to me. But when we moved out of our house 3 years ago, it took me 3 months to clear out my office because I could not get rid of things. But I found so many things that I did that I couldn't believe how many speeches I gave, how many stories I wrote, how many things I did, which I didn't get paid for. So there was a lot of stuff people came to me after that and I did get paid well, but I did a lot before I actually got paid well. So maybe luck really is laced with a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Plus we're both kind of risk takers, maybe more than the average person. And I think, in order to really move along in some ways, particularly as a consultant and a freelancer, you have to be willing to take some risks. And not every risk pays off, but every risk at least allows you to meet another person that might connect you to another person that might be the thing that made it all worthwhile.
Right. Right.
So just one more question that I have for you, that if you could just give some of my listeners advice, maybe one best tip for how important it is and how wonderful it is to have a partnership, and one tip of caution, like be on the lookout in terms of having a partner to work with.
Well, I think the benefit is again to have somebody to throw creative ideas against and really to divide and conquer the work. But again, I think it has to be the right combination. Like, we've seen it not work. Mm-hmm. I think the communication piece and, without a doubt, if you have two people carrying the load, it's a lighter load for either person. I can imagine if you pick the wrong person, it could be, the slow road to hell. I'm just glad you didn't,
And I would say, make sure you pick somebody you can trust. And, I trust Hillary implicitly. And that is huge. Like, I trust my husband implicitly, and I trust her implicitly. And those are probably the only two people, basically that I trust that much. So you have to be able to trust them. You have to be able to trust them with their knowledge that they're going to meet their deadlines, I guess, but also that they're going to be there for you and you're going to be able to talk through things that annoy you. And that would be the cautionary tale. I totally agree with her, about the, what the benefit is, but just take your time before deciding who to work with.
Well,
I took
advice, girls.
35, 40 years.
35, 40 years, yeah.
And it worked.
It was a slow simmer, a simmer.
You had the trial run first.
Like a whole lifetime.
Right.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Could you just tell our listeners again where they could find you, your book, your Instagram?
All right. Well, the book is on Amazon or any online booksellers or in bookstores. And on Instagram, we're at Menopause Diet Plan. And on Facebook, we're at Menopause Diet Plan. And the name of the book is the Menopause Diet Plan. So,
okay,
repetition,
this is easy.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Easy to
Bonnie,
remember.
I was in New York City 3 weekends ago, and I found a copy of the book in the Strand bookstore.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's
I
like
love that.
There's Waldo to go into a place like that, like a big giant used bookstore. And I found one of my books, and I found the Menopause Diet Plan.
She sent me a picture, and it's like our book in the wild. It's
That
so
is in New York City.
in the wild.
I love that. The first time I ever saw my book on the shelves in a store was actually in an airport. And I started to cry. I was by myself and I started to cry. I was so excited.
I know.
Well, thank you so much. Really, thank you so much for joining me. And this is a wrap for today's episode, but I thank you so much, Elizabeth Ward and Hillary Wright, for schmoozing with us today and telling us all about your media journey, what it's like to collaborate, what we need to be careful about. And for those listening, if you enjoyed today's episode as much as I enjoyed talking here and listening, please subscribe to my show, Media Savvy, write a review, and you know how much I would love it if you would tell your friends about this show. And remember that it's not just about getting your name out there, it's about connecting with your audience in meaningful ways. So be sure to tune in next time. Until then, ask me any questions about media at BTD Media on Instagram. Don't be shy, send me a message. And by the way, you are looking very media savvy today. So thank you so much, and I'll see you in the spotlight.